Well, greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that his presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. We are still in John chapter 18 at the scene of Jesus' arrest. And you know that Jesus is with his disciples and that Judas has led a delegation of leadership and soldiers to where Jesus is at. And they're looking for Jesus with torches and lanterns. And Jesus asks them, "Who are you seeking?" And they say, "We're looking for Jesus the Nazarene." Jesus says, "I am." They all fall back, they all fall down. Jesus questions them again. "Who are you seeking?" "Jesus the Nazarene," they say. Jesus says, "I told you I am." And then Jesus says that just take me. And if I'm the one you're looking for, take me, let these others go so that they would not be lost. They agree to do that. And as they're getting ready to bind Jesus and arrest him, Peter has a sword, and he draws his sword and he cuts off the ear of the servant of the high priest who was with them. Jesus tells Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink from the cup the Father has for me?" And with that, they arrest Jesus and they bind him and they take him to the high priest. And John reminds us that Caiaphas had said that it is better for one man to die than for all the people to die. And so we see Jesus is on his way to his death. Now, all four Gospels have this story of Peter cutting off the servant of the high priest's ear. I don't know exactly how this happened, whether Peter was chopping down, whether Peter was swinging across sideways and the guy ducked, and don't know how he ended up with just cutting off an ear. But they all have the story of Peter cutting off the ear of the servant of the high priest. Now, it's only in Matthew and John that we learn that it's Peter who did this. In Mark and Luke, it's an unnamed disciple, but Matthew and John, they name him. It's Peter. In Luke, and Luke alone, we read that Jesus touches the servant and heals him after Peter has sliced off his ear. So Luke has the healing story. And John is the only one who has the name of the servant. His name is Malchus. Don't know if John knew him already. Don't know if this man became part of John's community, part of his church. But John is the only one with the detail of the guy's name, Malchus. John is also the only one who has Jesus' words, "Put your sword away, shall I not drink the cup that the Father has for me?" So, pretty significant event. All four Gospels share it, and each kind of has their details. And John has the guy's name and the words, "Shall I not drink from the cup the Father has for me?" Now, here's what I'm thinking about. How often are we like Peter to where we try to use worldly swords, worldly force, in an effort to defend Jesus and to really establish Jesus' rule rather than to allow the world to win? That we end up using worldly force to fight the world rather than actually following Jesus and realizing that Jesus has come to drink the cup the Father has for him, that cup of the cross, and Jesus actually calls us to take up our cross and to follow him. See, I'm thinking about the Crusades, where the church mistakenly took up the sword to defend Jesus and to defend Christianity and to try to establish Christianity against other religions of the world. And in doing that, basically, the church, the Crusades, were cutting off ears, making it virtually impossible to hear the news of what God has done in Jesus. That Jesus came to drink the cup of the Father, that there could be salvation for all, And yet here's the church using swords to try to defend Jesus, and in the process, slicing off ears, making it virtually impossible to hear the good news. But I don't just think about the Crusades. I think about our times today. How often does the church attempt to use political force to try to defend Jesus, to try to establish the ways of Jesus, to try to establish the rule of Jesus, rather than actually following Jesus and taking the position of a servant and being willing to suffer and to love and to use force in a way that, and power in a way that conforms to the cross instead of conforming to the world. It just seems that too often the church, Christians, end up using worldly force, political force, as a means of trying to defend Jesus and establish Jesus' ways over others, rather than the way of the cross. And in the process, what are we doing? We're cutting off ears so that it becomes virtually impossible for people to hear the good news of Jesus. All they see is one more political sword. I think about it financially, how often Christians, how often the church uses financial power, economic power as a way to try to impose its will upon people, as a way to try to force people to accept, quote unquote, the ways of Jesus when not practicing the ways of Jesus themselves. And that becomes one more sword, worldly sword, making it virtually impossible for people to hear the good news of Jesus. I can think about it in terms of missionaries, in terms of the U.S. church and its missionary endeavors and financial power of the U.S. church over other churches or churches of the world. All different kinds of examples come to mind. Can't quite go into those in the moment. One more thing. How often do we use the power that we have, whether it's at our work, whether it's a position we have in our family, whatever it might be? We end up using whatever swords we have in a pretty worldly way, trying to defend Jesus, best of motives, but in the process, slicing off ears, making it virtually impossible for people to hear the good news that we're actually defending and hoping to proclaim. So, wherever you find yourself scattered today, put away your sword. Jesus doesn't need our swords to defend him and to establish his kingdom. His kingdom is established as he drinks the cup the Father has for him. And we become agents of that kingdom, agents of his rule, as we conform to him. However we use power, it has to be used in such a way that it conforms to the cross, and that we're listening to Jesus, and that our lives are befitting of him. We need to put away our swords and follow Jesus on the way of the cross. God bless. Have a great day. And no swords today, except, of course, the sword of his good word. God bless.